Jumpin In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. And here we are once again, as if time has flown. Saturday night, 9 o'clock, Jumpin' In. It's the best in modern and contemporary jazz with myself, H.
And me, Chris. Yes, to quote the great Blunders and Swan, then October and a gale, wind and slush and rain, and indeed hail. Yes, the beast of winter showing its teeth as it chases the tail end of autumn, and a definite chill in the air this week. But I'm persevering with the shorts for a little while longer, and I suggest you do the same. Gin, whiskey, rum, the choice is yours. Jumping in on the smart speaker, or radio as we used to call it, half-term chaos, and everything that goes with it, along with the usual change in the weather. So stay in and catch up on your listening. And speaking of the weather, what have you been blown away by this week, H?
I think my shorts are blown away. I'm going for the ripped jeans. It's a halfway house at the moment. But the shorts haven't been put into the winter wardrobe yet. There's a newie oldie from Oregon. Yes, one of our favourite bands of all time, perhaps. A new one, but I say new, but it's 1974. The fidelity is fantastic recording. A really great one to have in the collection. We'll be hearing more about that. Something that popped up in the car the other day. I thought, I really enjoyed that one. It's rather fine. A bit from Branford Marsalis and is for friends, shall we say. And a new one from, and I do mean new in this case, Matthias Heike.
And from me, a short protest, a water feature, a country in Southeast Asia, and to get things moving, here's Samba de Arawak. taken from saxophonist Rafael Fierra's recently released Suite Vera Cruz. That was Samba de Arawak. Rafael, a long-time member of the Grammy Award-winning Hermeto Pasquale Big Band, but has 9 albums out in his own name with a variety of small and, as we just heard, large ensembles amongst them. A champion for Latin American rhythms, the suite has the kind of groove throughout that wants you to reach for your dancing shoes with one hand and perhaps a jug of mojitos with the other. And it has that comfortable, easy flow of a band who know each other almost telepathically, and the whole album is like that. It's really great playing and writing. Only quite short, only about 35 minutes, but those of us who remember having vinyl the first time around, that was about the length of an album you used to get. When he's not playing, Rafael is currently the full professor at Federal University in Uberlândia in Brazil, as well as his degree, his master's, his doctorate, his postdoctorate qualifications. I'm surprised that he finds time to get out and play with the band with such a laid-back Latin approach to life.
Yes, how some of these people do fit it in, I do not know. Matthias Eick, well recognised on ECM. He's got a new one out called When We Leave, among the most immediately recognisable solos to emerge from the Norwegian jazz scene. That wistful trumpet sound that seems to be almost reminiscent of Norwegian jazz players sometimes, doesn't it? Maybe they're all influenced by Jan Garbarek, I don't know. But good melodic compositions. Jazz Times said of his debut album The Door, which came out in 2008, a plaintive and spare sound, emphasising at the times in the reviews, like all good band leaders, Matthias's focus is on the interaction of his musicians. The contrast of his restraint and the energy around him constitutes the album's driving tensions. Well, this is a new one out. He's focused and strengthened his approach on both fronts. It's acclaimed, and I'm not going to disagree with this. It popped up the other day on iTunes listening to it. I thought, gosh, what was that? And I didn't know what it was. I think this could be Matthias's album. Indeed it is. The track is called Loving. It's great stuff. Lovely. Been enjoying that one. As I said, it popped up the other day without me knowing what it was, and I thought, yes, I really do enjoy that. Matthias Eich's new album, which is entitled When We Leave. Matthias on trumpet and voice as well. Hakan Arster on the violin percussion. Andres Uvo piano. Alden Erlien on bass. Thorsten Lofthus on the drums, Helge Andreas Norback, and also on drums and percussion, and Stian Carstensen, I recognise his name. I think he works with Ian Bellamy occasionally on pedal steel guitar. Just came out last month in September the 24th, so you'll be able to check it out. Recorded a couple of years ago. And Matthias says, when we leave, as a natural continuation of Ravensburg, almost a Ravensburg 2, more of everything, where its predecessor drew portraits of friends and family and sketched some personal interactions. The new album follows its protagonists through a troubled year.
Interesting when you say that, maybe did it all get started by Jan Garbarek, but I suppose to an extent it probably went back a bit further than that, because you look across all the great Scandinavian options of jazz that we've had. It's largely based around folk idiom and folk music at the background of it, isn't it, really? Yeah,
there's a lot of that, isn't it? They are often based on those folk themes, which gives them that different feeling, rather than maybe sort of Negro spirituals or whatever, which the blues and the jazz came from. They're coming from a different basis.
And I think if you look at Jazz per Svenska and Jazz per Ruska, which were two albums that inspired Esbjörn Svensson going back a long time, it was really the start of getting those folk music inspired tracks out there. Fantastic. Next, a new piano trio. Well, new to me at least. Regular listeners will know that both of us have held a soft spot for piano trios for some good while. I suppose being a pianist, I can relate directly to the kind of catalogue of sounds and textures that were available to them. However, Cologne-based Slow Fox perhaps don't fall into the common format, as they are drummerless, instead adding a saxophonist. From their latest released Freedom, here's I. fascinating project, this. Slow Fox from a German trio from the recently released Freedom album. The curious title, I, can be explained by the group's inspiration. Neither an exploration of the free jazz idiom or an abstract interpretation of the concept of freedom. The title is taken from a quotation from singer, pianist and activist Nina Simone, who in a very famous interview when asked how she would define freedom said, "I will tell you what freedom is to me. No fear. I mean, really, no fear." And each of the 15 tracks on the albums is named after a word or words from that quote, so that when you read the back of the album, you read the quote. And who are Slow Fox? Well, Sebastian Grams is the main composer in the group. He's heard on double bass and space bass. That's another new instrument to me, an interesting hybrid acoustic instrument which has an additional 12 sympathetic resonating strings underneath the main ones. Award-winning Haydn Chisholm on saxes and flute, who originally hails from New Zealand, and Austrian Philip Zubeck on piano, prepared piano and Moog. Definitely one to watch out for. Slow Fox have, I think, an original voice and an engaging jazz vocabulary.
Can't disagree with that. Listening to Jumpin In, of course, here on Manx Radio. Where else would you find music like this on the Isle of Man or elsewhere on the web, really? You could struggle to find, well, you go a long way to find anything better. I'll be as modest as that. Chris and H with Jumpin In here, and of course, podcast. If you're listening on the podcast, you are very welcome as well. All the best sounds, and we like to think that we're playing something new you might not have heard before. But you might have heard of this guy, Branford Marsalis. Yes, been around a while now. You know you're getting old in jazz when you remember him being one of the young Turks, one of the young lions coming up, and now he's one of the elder statesmen. Yes, where did the time go? Here is one of his more recent outings, which I heard on the car as I was driving the other day. Great driving track, this one, as long as you don't drive too quickly. Although I don't really know whether the title is good when you link it in with that driving analogy. It's called Whiplash. Great track. Whiplash. Branford Marsalis and his quartet. Branford on saxophones. Joey Calderazzo, been with a long time, of course, on piano. Eric Rivas bass. And the relatively newly hired then Justin Faulkner, another young Turk on drums, who replaced, of course, the great Jeff Tain Watts, who moved on to do his own project. I think in many ways if you look around, he's got, Lord, he knows how many albums out under his own name, Jeff Watts. Great stuff they are too, all driven very drum-wise, as you can imagine. And I think Justin brings a new energy to it as well, a different energy. You could hardly say Jeff Tain Watts wasn't energetic as a drummer, but Justin Faulkner brings a different sort of sound to it. The New York Times called the album knockout, hard-nosed, hyper-acute, tradition-minded but modern, defined by the high-wire grace of the working band. I'd agree as well. So it really is a great album. That's some other great tunes on it as well, and a new era for them with Justin Faulkner, as I say, replacing Tain Watts. And they say how a lot of these young bands, I mean, obviously Art Blakey used to do it. Miles famously did it when he sort of started with his new quintet, hiring Tony Williams, who was 17, I think, at the time when he came into the band. Miles told him, "You got to grow a moustache," because he sort of looked like he was still at school, so they could get it, because they wouldn't allow him in the clubs in places. Grow a moustache, which I loved, I have to say. And yeah, there is a tradition, I think, in jazz of bringing young drummers into bands to sort of re-energise them. And it certainly did with that one. The album is happily entitled The Bramford Marsalis Quartet, 4 Mother Playing Tunes, or 4 MFs Playing Tunes, as it says on the album. And Bramford says, "I wasn't going to call it that." Basically, he'd recorded it, and the sort of producers said, "What are you going to call it then?" He says, "Well, I don't know, it's just 4 playing tunes." And they said, "Great title, we'll use it." And he said, "No." So, but they went with it. They thought it was marvellous, but they've just put MFs on the album to be on the safe side.
Musical Fellows, no doubt, where that was.
That's the one.
Musical Fellows, yes. Bramford, I suppose, out of all the Marsalis brothers, the one who probably had the broadest career with his true jazz followers and playing, but also cinema soundtracks, and of course all the work he did with Sting, amongst other pop projects. Next now, an interesting album from another eclectic group of improvisers and composers called Alchemy Sound Project. The quintet brings together a diverse set of talents from across the US with skills in jazz, classical and world music. And their latest release, Africa Love, Real Alchemy or Fool's Gold? You decide. Here's The Fountain. The Fountain from Alchemy Sound Project's latest release, Africa Love. A great sounding album, this often giving a much fuller sound than just 5 musicians would suggest. All of the members holding top academic positions across the USA and in Africa. Let's hope they can get together often enough to move to Europe and perhaps the UK.
Time is flying on since 1974, March the 14th to be exact, in the Radio Bremen, Germany. Who was there? Oregon. Marvellous stuff. 1974, would you believe? Oregon playing live in Germany. Just been released, as you can gather from that recording. The fidelity is fantastic. I take it must have come through the soundboard or something along those lines. It's certainly not a cassette player in the audience, at least in any case. Wonderful hi-fi quality on that one. Makes it even more enjoyable than it might have done. Radio Bremen, so I assumed it was actually broadcast at some stage. All the tracks are Towner compositions, including that fantastic take on Distant Hills. And yeah, as he sort of said back in the 1970s, I've always liked the acoustic sound with Oregon. They seem to be more expressive and organic, and how he plays the 12-string rather differently. He says, I press the double strings down and try to pluck them as much as possible at the same time to create interesting overtones, which I think are closer to a harpsichord. I can thoroughly recommend this double CD, and even better because I got it for my birthday.
And further to which, Ralph himself sat in on the mixing for that. It is an absolutely fabulous job, and hopefully we'll be seeing him very soon at the London Jazz Festival. Well, that's about it for this week's Jumpin' In, but we've just about got time for a track from Copenhagen's award-winning avant-garde improvisers Girls in Airports, who in their typically sparse and minimalist style have combined the quintet of sax, keys and drums, percussion and violin, in this instance with the Our House Jazz Orchestra, to spectacular effect. From their 2021 release Leap, we'll leave you with Myanmar and see you for a suitably spooky Halloween show next week. Bye for now.